Welcome back, beautiful minds. The most dangerous person in any room is never the loudest. It's the one nobody can predict. While others waste energy proving their intelligence, you quietly study patterns, motives, and timing. They laughed because your silence looked like hesitation. They mistook your patience for weakness. But then something changed. They noticed two signs they couldn't explain, and suddenly every joke stopped sounding funny. Every plan they made began falling apart before it even started. They never feared your strength. They feared the moment they realized your mind had been 10 steps ahead all along. The first mistake people make is believing that power announces itself. They expect confidence to arrive with noise, dominance with constant movement, and intelligence with endless explanations. That expectation becomes the very weakness a strategic mind quietly studies. The room is always full of people desperate to be understood, desperate to prove their value before anyone has questioned it. They speak too soon, reveal too much, and mistake visibility for influence. Meanwhile, the person who says the least often learns the most. Silence is never empty. It is filled with observation, calculation, and patience. It is the language of someone who understands that information is more valuable when collected than when given away. Most people cannot tolerate silence because silence forces them to face uncertainty. They rush to fill every pause with opinions, excuses, predictions, and emotions. They think they are controlling the conversation, but in reality they are exposing themselves. Every unnecessary word reveals priorities. Every emotional reaction reveals pressure points. Every attempt to impress reveals insecurity hiding beneath confidence. While they are busy performing, you are quietly watching patterns emerge. You notice who interrupts others. You notice who changes their story depending on the audience. You notice who becomes uncomfortable when they cannot predict your response. Those observations become pieces of a puzzle that eventually forms a picture far clearer than anything they intended to show. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who refuses to react the way everyone expects. People rely on predictable behavior because it gives them the illusion of control. If they know what makes you angry, they know how to manipulate you. If they know what earns your approval, they know how to influence you. If they know your fears, they know where to apply pressure. But silence interrupts that process. It denies them the satisfaction of reading your intentions. They begin guessing instead of knowing. And the moment people start guessing, they begin making mistakes. Think about how often conflicts escalate simply because someone feels the need to answer immediately. An insult is thrown and another follows. A rumor spreads and panic creates 10 more rumors. A criticism appears and pride demands an instant defense. Strategic people understand that immediate reactions usually serve emotions rather than outcomes. They recognize that time changes perspective. The statement that seemed devastating yesterday often looks insignificant a week later. The opportunity that appeared impossible suddenly becomes obvious after careful observation. Silence creates distance between emotion and decision, and within that distance lies clarity. People frequently confuse quietness with weakness because they judge confidence through volume instead of control. They assume the loudest voice carries the strongest conviction. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates the opposite. The most effective leaders, negotiators, and decision makers often spend more time listening than speaking. They understand that every conversation contains two battles. One battle happens through words. The other happens through attention. Whoever controls attention often controls the outcome. When everyone else competes to be heard, the silent observer quietly gathers the advantage. Have you noticed how uncomfortable some people become when they cannot interpret your thoughts? They search your expressions for clues. They replay your previous conversations looking for hidden meanings. They ask indirect questions hoping you'll accidentally reveal your intentions. Sometimes they even invent explanations because uncertainty feels unbearable. The human mind naturally dislikes unanswered questions. When answers are unavailable, imagination eagerly fills the gaps. Ironically, the less you reveal, the more people reveal about themselves while trying to understand you. This is where strategy separates itself from performance. Performance seeks applause, strategy seeks results. Performance wants immediate recognition. Strategy accepts temporary misunderstanding if it serves a greater objective. While others chase validation, strategic thinkers collect evidence. They compare actions against promises. They recognize recurring behaviors instead of isolated moments. They understand that one conversation reveals little, but repeated observations reveal character. Patterns never lie for long. Silence also strengthens your relationship with yourself. In quiet moments, you hear thoughts that constant conversation usually drowns out. You begin questioning assumptions instead of defending them. You recognize emotional impulses before acting upon them. Instead of becoming a prisoner of every passing feeling, you become an observer of your own mind. That awareness creates discipline. Discipline creates consistency. And consistency quietly builds a reputation stronger than any speech ever could. There is another reason silence becomes so powerful. It encourages others to underestimate you. Underestimation is one of the greatest strategic advantages anyone can possess. When people believe they have already figured you out, they stop paying close attention. They become careless. They reveal plans they would otherwise hide. They assume they have already won before the game has truly begun. Their confidence blinds them while your restraint sharpens your vision. Every careless assumption they make becomes another opportunity waiting to be noticed. Observation is not passive. It is active intelligence. Every gesture, every pause, every contradiction, and every unexpected reaction becomes useful information. Strategic people understand that the world constantly communicates through behavior. Words can be rehearsed, but habits eventually expose reality. Someone may claim loyalty while consistently disappearing during difficult moments. Someone may preach confidence while constantly seeking approval. Someone may promise honesty while avoiding direct answers. Those contradictions become visible only to those willing to watch longer than everyone else. That is why true strategy rarely begins with action. It begins with attention. Before changing the board, the strategic mind studies every piece already in motion. Before making a move, it understands the motives driving everyone around it. Before speaking, it considers whether the next sentence creates value or simply satisfies emotion. In a world obsessed with instant responses, calculated silence becomes a rare form of strength that quietly transforms observation into undeniable advantage. Patience has always been misunderstood because the modern world worships speed. People celebrate instant reactions, quick victories, and immediate recognition, believing that whoever moves first must be the strongest. But strategy has never been about moving first. It has always been about moving at the right time. That difference is invisible to impatient minds. They see your refusal to rush and assume you are uncertain. They watch you wait and conclude you are afraid. They mistake your calm for weakness because they cannot imagine someone willingly choosing restraint when emotion demands action. Nothing unsettles an impulsive person more than someone who cannot be rushed. Pressure only works when the target believes time is the enemy. Strategic thinkers understand something different. They know that panic shortens vision while patience expands it. Every extra moment spent observing reveals details that emotional reactions would have ignored. Every delayed decision allows hidden motives to rise to the surface. What looked like an urgent crisis often reveals itself as someone else's attempt to control your choices. People who manipulate others depend on predictable emotional responses. They provoke anger because angry people become careless. They provoke fear because frightened people surrender control. They provoke insecurity because insecure people begin explaining themselves endlessly. The manipulator does not win through strength. They win through timing. They know exactly when to apply pressure, hoping your emotions will complete the rest of the work. But patience breaks that cycle. When you refuse to react immediately, their carefully designed strategy begins collapsing. Suddenly, the person trying to control you becomes the one losing control. Imagine someone throwing an insult, expecting instant outrage. They have already prepared for your defense. They have rehearsed their next attack. They know exactly how the argument is supposed to unfold. Then you simply remain composed. You neither accept the insult nor fight against it. Instead, you allow silence to replace conflict. Now their script has failed. The conversation they planned no longer exists. They are forced to improvise, and that is usually where truth begins revealing itself. Frustration makes people careless. Carelessness exposes intentions they worked hard to conceal. Patience is often confused with doing nothing, but they are completely different things. Doing nothing is surrender. Patience is preparation. One abandons responsibility, the other strengthens it. While everyone else believes you are inactive, your mind is collecting information, evaluating possibilities, and calculating consequences. Your stillness is not empty. It is filled with deliberate awareness. Every passing moment sharpens your understanding until action becomes not only possible, but inevitable. There is a reason experienced chess players rarely rush their strongest moves. They understand that one unnecessary action can destroy an entire position. They allow their opponent to create weaknesses first. They observe patterns developing across the board before committing valuable pieces. Life operates in much the same way. Most people expose their own weaknesses without realizing it. They reveal impatience, pride, insecurity, and desperation through repeated behavior. Those who rush rarely notice these openings because they become too focused on immediate victory instead of lasting success. People often believe confidence means always having an answer. Real confidence is much quieter. It accepts uncertainty without becoming uncomfortable. It understands that not every question deserves an immediate response, and not every challenge deserves immediate attention. The strongest minds are comfortable saying nothing until they have something meaningful to say. That discipline is rare because silence requires self-control, and self-control is one of the hardest skills anyone can develop. Notice how quickly emotional people exhaust themselves. Every criticism becomes a battle. Every disagreement becomes personal. Every setback becomes proof that the world is against them. They spend enormous amounts of energy reacting to circumstances instead of directing them. Strategic patience protects that energy. Instead of allowing every external event to dictate your emotional state, you begin deciding which situations deserve your attention and which deserve your indifference. That choice alone changes the direction of your life. Those who underestimated you often expected frustration to force mistakes. They believed delays would make you desperate. They assumed obstacles would push you into reckless decisions. What they failed to understand was that your patience was never passive acceptance. It was disciplined endurance. While they celebrated temporary advantages, you quietly adapted. While they became overconfident, you became more observant. While they assumed the story was ending, you were still studying the beginning. One of the greatest advantages patience provides is perspective. Time has an extraordinary ability to expose reality. Lies become harder to maintain. False confidence begins to crack. Hidden agendas slowly reveal themselves through repeated behavior. Someone pretending to support you eventually reveals resentment. Someone pretending to oppose you may unexpectedly reveal respect. Time removes disguises that emotion often fails to notice. The person who waits long enough usually sees the truth without forcing it into the open. This is why emotional discipline is more valuable than emotional intensity. Anyone can react when circumstances become difficult. Very few people can remain composed while everyone around them loses balance. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. It is the decision that emotion will not become your master. That decision transforms every challenge into an opportunity to think more clearly than those creating the chaos. Eventually, people begin recognizing something they never expected. Your patience was never hesitation. Your restraint was never fear. Your quiet observation was never uncertainty. Every delay had purpose. Every pause had intention. Every moment you appeared inactive. You were actually allowing the situation to reveal exactly what needed to be seen. By the time others finally understood what you were doing, the opportunity to outmaneuver you had already disappeared, because the strongest move is often the one made only after everyone else has revealed their hand. Most people never notice the exact moment perception changes. It doesn't happen with an announcement or a dramatic event. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. One day they see you as ordinary. The next, they begin watching you differently. They cannot explain why, but something feels different. The confidence they once had in predicting you begins to disappear. The jokes become less frequent. The challenges become more cautious. The conversations become more calculated. They are no longer dealing with the version of you they imagined. They are confronting the person they failed to understand from the very beginning. The first sign was your calm under pressure. It sounds simple, but very few people possess it. Anyone can appear confident when life is comfortable. Anyone can smile when everything goes according to plan. The true measure of a person's strength is revealed when uncertainty enters the room. Most people become louder when pressure increases. Their thoughts race. Their emotions take control. They rush to defend themselves, explain every decision, and prove they are right. They mistake activity for effectiveness. But you did something unexpected. You stayed calm. That calmness disturbed people more than any emotional reaction ever could. They expected frustration. They expected panic. They expected anger. Instead, they found someone who refused to let chaos dictate their behavior. They watched situations that should have broken your confidence somehow sharpen your focus instead. The more complicated things became, the more composed you appeared. It wasn't because you had all the answers. It was because you understood that panic never creates solutions. It only creates more problems. Calmness is powerful because it changes the emotional atmosphere around you. Imagine standing in a room where everyone is arguing, blaming one another, and making impulsive decisions. Then one person remains completely centered, without saying much. That individual becomes the reference point everyone unconsciously notices. People begin measuring their own emotions against yours. Some admire it, others resent it, but nobody ignores it. Emotional stability has a way of exposing emotional instability in everyone nearby. Many people secretly depend on your reactions. Their confidence exists only as long as they can influence your emotional state. They feel powerful when they can upset you, confuse you, or force you into defending yourself. When those reactions disappear, they lose the only evidence they believed proved their influence. Suddenly, they begin questioning themselves instead of questioning you. They wonder why their usual tactics no longer work. They wonder why every attempt to provoke you feels strangely ineffective. The second sign was even more unsettling. People realized you had developed the ability to predict outcomes before they happened. Not because you possessed some mysterious gift, but because you paid attention to patterns while everyone else focused on isolated moments. Human behavior is surprisingly repetitive. People repeat habits, excuses, fears, and ambitions far more often than they realize. Once you begin recognizing those patterns, future decisions become easier to anticipate. Someone who always chooses comfort over responsibility will likely do it again. Someone who constantly seeks validation will eventually sacrifice principles for approval. Someone who refuses accountability today will probably avoid it tomorrow. You are no longer reacting to individual events. You are observing the systems that produce those events. That difference changed everything. Others mistook your accurate predictions for luck. They believed you simply guessed correctly. They couldn't accept that observation had quietly replaced assumption. While they chased possibilities, you studied probabilities. You understood that actions leave trails, and those trails usually point toward future choices. The more consistently someone behaves, the easier it becomes to anticipate their next move. This ability made people uncomfortable because it disrupted their illusion of unpredictability. Everyone likes believing they are impossible to understand. They assume their motives remain hidden behind carefully chosen words. But behavior speaks louder than intention. Eventually, habits reveal what language attempts to conceal. You noticed contradictions between promises and actions. You noticed repeated excuses disguised as temporary circumstances. You noticed how people treated others when they believed nobody important was watching. Those observations formed conclusions long before anyone realized you were paying attention. Once both signs became visible, Perception shifted completely. Your calm suggested emotional discipline. Your accurate predictions suggested strategic awareness. Together, they created something rare. People stopped viewing you as someone merely participating in events. They started seeing someone capable of understanding the game beneath the surface. That realization changes how people behave around you. Some individuals become more respectful because they recognize genuine competence. Others become more defensive because they fear being understood too clearly. A few even distance themselves entirely because pretending becomes exhausting when they believe someone can see through it. None of these reactions happen because you demanded authority. They happen because consistency quietly earned it. Interestingly, neither sign required extraordinary talent. They required habits that most people neglect. The habit of listening more than speaking. The habit of observing before judging, the habit of separating emotion from analysis, the habit of accepting uncomfortable truths instead of comforting illusions. Small disciplines repeated over time eventually produce results that appear extraordinary to those who ignored the fundamentals. By the time people finally recognized these two signs, the story they had written about you no longer made sense. They could no longer dismiss your decisions as coincidence or your success as accident. They began realizing that what looked like quietness was actually awareness, what looked like patience was preparation, and what looked like simplicity concealed a mind that had been studying every move long before anyone else realized there was even a game being played. There is a strange advantage hidden inside being underestimated. But most people never discover it because they spend their entire lives trying to prove everyone wrong. They exhaust themselves chasing approval, explaining every decision, defending every choice, and demanding recognition from people who never intended to understand them in the first place. They believe respect comes from convincing others of their value. Strategy understands something far more powerful. Sometimes the greatest advantage is allowing people to believe they have already figured you out. The moment someone thinks they know your limits is the moment they stop looking for your growth. People rarely prepare for what they do not expect. They prepare for the version of you that exists inside their imagination. If they believe you are emotional, they expect emotional reactions. If they believe you lack confidence, they expect hesitation. If they believe you are incapable of adapting, they create plans based on your supposed weaknesses. Their confidence is not built upon reality. It is built upon assumptions. And assumptions are fragile foundations. The stronger their belief in a false version of you becomes, the less prepared they are when reality finally appears. There is an old psychological pattern that repeats itself everywhere. Once the human mind reaches a conclusion, it begins searching for evidence that confirms it while ignoring everything that contradicts it. This is why people who underestimate you often remain blind to your progress. Every improvement you make feels like an exception instead of a transformation. Every success becomes luck instead of discipline. Every achievement becomes temporary instead of earned. They are not observing you objectively anymore. They are protecting the story they already decided to believe. That story becomes your greatest advantage. While they continue measuring you against an outdated version of yourself, you continue evolving in silence. You are learning new skills while they assume you have stopped growing. You are strengthening your discipline while they remain distracted by appearances. You are studying situations from every angle while they waste energy celebrating victories that exist only in their imagination. They become comfortable because they believe the outcome is already decided. Comfort weakens awareness. Awareness is where strategy lives. Most people reveal their ambitions too early. The moment they have an idea, they announce it. The moment they gain a little confidence, they display it. They seek validation before they achieve results. But every unnecessary announcement gives others time to prepare. It invites criticism before progress has even begun. It creates resistance that might never have existed otherwise. Strategic minds understand that not every plan needs an audience. Some victories become stronger simply because nobody saw them coming. Being underestimated also protects you from unnecessary attention. Attention attracts expectations, competition, and interference. The more people notice you, the more opinions they develop. Some will attempt to discourage you. Others will quietly compete with you. A few may even try to sabotage your progress simply because your growth challenges their comfort. But when people overlook you, they often leave you alone. They unknowingly give you the space needed to improve without constant interruption. Think about nature for a moment. The tallest tree receives the strongest wind. The brightest light attracts the most insects. The loudest voice invites the greatest resistance. Quiet growth, however, often goes unnoticed until it becomes impossible to ignore. By the time people recognize how much the tree has grown, its roots are already too deep to be easily shaken. Real strength develops beneath the surface, long before anyone applauds what they finally see above it. Those who underestimate you often become victims of their own certainty. Certainty makes people careless. They stop asking questions because they believe they already know the answers. They stop observing because they assume nothing has changed. They stop preparing because they feel no threat exists. That false confidence becomes far more dangerous to them than any challenge you could have presented directly. While they relax, you continue sharpening yourself. Another hidden advantage is emotional freedom. Once you stop trying to control how others perceive you, you recover enormous amounts of mental energy. Instead of constantly managing impressions, you focus on improving reality. Instead of correcting every misunderstanding, you invest in becoming more capable. Instead of chasing approval, you pursue mastery. Ironically, genuine respect often arrives only after you stop demanding it. There will always be people who refuse to update their opinion of you. Even overwhelming evidence will not change their minds because accepting your growth would force them to admit their earlier judgment was incomplete. Pride resists correction. Ego dislikes being proven wrong. Rather than changing their perspective, some people will invent new excuses to explain your success. They will call it luck, timing, coincidence, or outside help. Let them. Their explanation changes nothing about your progress. The most strategic response to underestimation is not revenge. It is consistency. Every disciplined action quietly weakens false assumptions without requiring a single argument. Every goal achieved without unnecessary attention becomes undeniable proof that actions carry more weight than opinions. Eventually, reality grows too large to fit inside the small story others created about you. Then comes the moment they never anticipated. They begin noticing results they cannot explain. The quiet person they ignored now solves problems they cannot solve. The individual they dismissed now earns opportunities they wanted for themselves. The one they considered ordinary suddenly demonstrates extraordinary composure when pressure rises. Confusion replaces certainty. Doubt replaces arrogance. The same people who once overlooked you begin studying every move, wondering when everything changed, never realizing that the transformation had been happening all along while they were too busy believing you would never become more than the version they had already decided to see. There is a reason storms look powerful but disappear within hours, while mountains remain standing for centuries. Raw force creates attention. Strategy creates permanence. Most people are fascinated by displays of strength because they are immediate and dramatic. They admire loud victories, bold declarations, and aggressive actions. Yet the strongest outcomes are rarely created by overwhelming force alone. They are built through careful thinking, disciplined choices, and the ability to see beyond the moment everyone else is trapped inside. People often believe winning is about overpowering the competition. They imagine success belongs to whoever works the hardest, speaks the loudest, or fights the longest. But history tells a different story, again and again. The greatest victories have belonged to those who understood timing better than aggression. Intelligence transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Without strategy, even tremendous strength becomes predictable. Predictable people are easy to defeat because their next move is already expected before they make it. Think about someone who relies only on power. Every disagreement becomes a confrontation. Every obstacle becomes something to smash through. Every challenge demands immediate action. At first, this approach seems impressive. It creates quick results and temporary victories. But eventually, force begins creating problems that intelligence could have avoided. Relationships break unnecessarily. Opportunities disappear because patience was abandoned. Energy is wasted solving conflicts that never needed to exist. Power without direction becomes exhaustion disguised as confidence. Strategic thinking begins with a different question. Instead of asking, how can I win this moment? It asks, what outcome serves me best in the long run? That small shift changes everything. Suddenly, proving yourself becomes less important than improving yourself. Immediate satisfaction becomes less valuable than lasting progress. Emotional victories lose their appeal because strategic victories continue producing rewards long after emotions have faded. One of the greatest misunderstandings about intelligence is that people confuse it with having all the answers. True intelligence is not knowing everything. It is knowing what matters most. It is recognizing which battles deserve your energy and which distractions exist only to steal your focus. Every day, countless opportunities compete for your attention. Arguments invite your response. Criticism demands your defense. Drama begs for your participation. Strategic people understand that attention is a limited resource. Every unnecessary conflict consumes energy that could have been invested somewhere meaningful. This is why calculated action consistently outperforms emotional action. Emotions are powerful, but they are temporary. They rise quickly and disappear just as fast. Decisions made entirely through emotion often solve today's frustration while creating tomorrow's regret. Strategy creates space between feeling and action. It allows logic to examine what emotion wants to rush. That pause often prevents mistakes that would have taken months or years to repair. Notice how easily crowds become controlled by emotion. Fear spreads rapidly, excitement spreads rapidly, anger spreads rapidly. Entire groups can change direction simply because emotions become contagious. Strategic individuals remain aware of this influence. They observe emotional waves without allowing themselves to be carried away by them. While others lose clarity during moments of chaos, they continue asking simple questions. What are the facts? What patterns exist here? What happens if I wait before responding? Those questions protect judgment when everyone else is reacting instinctively. Another remarkable advantage of strategy is efficiency. Two people may invest the same amount of effort and achieve completely different results. One works endlessly without direction, constantly reacting to circumstances. The other chooses actions carefully, focusing only on decisions that create meaningful progress. From the outside, it may appear that the second person is doing less. In reality, they are simply eliminating unnecessary effort. Intelligence is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters while ignoring what does not. Many people seek influence through visibility. They believe constant attention equals importance. They want recognition before they have earned trust. But genuine influence works differently. It grows quietly through consistency. People begin relying on those whose decisions repeatedly produce good outcomes. Respect is rarely demanded successfully. It is accumulated through dependable judgment. Every thoughtful decision strengthens credibility. Every reckless decision weakens it. There is also an invisible confidence that strategy creates. When you know your actions are guided by careful thought instead of emotional impulse, uncertainty becomes less intimidating. You stop fearing unexpected situations because you trust your ability to adapt. You no longer depend on perfect conditions. You depend on disciplined thinking. That confidence cannot be borrowed from applause or popularity because it comes from experience repeated over time. Those who rely only on force often mistake movement for progress. They remain busy every hour of the day, yet wonder why meaningful results remain distant. Strategic people understand that activity and effectiveness are not the same thing. Sometimes refusing to act is the most productive decision. Sometimes allowing others to reveal their intentions first creates opportunities impossible to manufacture through aggression. Patience, observation, and precise timing often accomplish what endless effort never could. Eventually, people begin noticing something difficult to explain. While others burn themselves out chasing every opportunity, you continue moving forward with steady consistency. While they become trapped inside unnecessary conflicts, you quietly advance toward meaningful goals. They expected strength to come from relentless force, louder voices, and constant action. Instead, they discovered that the greatest advantage belonged to the person who understood that a disciplined mind will always outperform uncontrolled power, because intelligence does not compete with force. It quietly directs it toward outcomes that brute strength alone could never achieve. The greatest advantage you can possess is not extraordinary talent, endless resources, or even perfect timing. It is becoming impossible to read. The moment people believe they understand you completely, they begin building strategies around their assumptions. They stop preparing for surprises because they think there are none left. They become comfortable predicting your emotions, your decisions, and your limits. That comfort is exactly what makes them vulnerable. Predictability creates patterns, and patterns become opportunities for anyone paying close attention. But when your actions are guided by discipline instead of impulse, certainty disappears. People are left trying to solve a puzzle that refuses to stay the same. Most individuals unknowingly reveal themselves every single day. Their moods dictate their choices. Their frustrations control their conversations. Their excitement exposes their plans long before those plans become reality. They announce every ambition, celebrate every small victory, complain about every obstacle, and react to every opinion directed toward them. Without realizing it, they provide everyone around them with an instruction manual explaining exactly how to influence them. They believe honesty requires complete transparency. What they fail to understand is that wisdom knows the difference between authenticity and unnecessary exposure. People naturally search for patterns because patterns create a sense of safety. If they know what makes you happy, they know how to gain your approval. If they know what angers you, they know where to attack. If they understand your fears, they know how to control your decisions. Manipulation begins the moment someone becomes confident they can predict your emotional responses. Every repeated reaction becomes another piece of information stored for future use. Every impulsive decision teaches observers how to guide your behavior without you even realizing it. Emotional discipline quietly destroys that advantage. Imagine someone expecting you to become defensive after criticism. They prepare arguments for the conversation they believe is coming. Instead, you calmly acknowledge the words, evaluate whether any truth exists within them, and move forward without unnecessary conflict. Suddenly, their preparation becomes useless. The script they rehearsed has no place to unfold. They are forced into uncertainty because your response did not match the version of you they had carefully constructed in their minds. Being difficult to read does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means becoming intentional. There is a significant difference between suppressing emotions and controlling them. Suppression hides feelings until they eventually explode. Control allows feelings to exist without allowing them to dictate behavior. You still experience disappointment, excitement, frustration, and joy, but you decide when those emotions deserve expression instead of allowing them to seize control the moment they appear. That single habit transforms the way others perceive your presence. One of the strongest forms of confidence is refusing to explain yourself unnecessarily. Many people feel an overwhelming need to justify every decision they make. They fear being misunderstood, so they offer endless explanations hoping everyone will approve. But every explanation creates another opportunity for criticism, manipulation, or interference. Strategic individuals understand that not every observer deserves complete access to their thinking. Sometimes the most powerful response is allowing results to speak long after opinions have faded. Unpredictability also protects your energy. When people cannot anticipate your next move, they spend more time reacting to you than controlling you. They become cautious. They second-guess their assumptions. They hesitate before acting because certainty has disappeared. Meanwhile, you remain focused on your own objectives instead of becoming distracted by their expectations. Your attention stays directed toward growth rather than performance. Another reason people become impossible to read is because they stop chasing validation. Validation creates dependence. Once you need approval, Your behavior becomes easier to predict because others know exactly what reward motivates you. Compliments influence your confidence. Criticism weakens your resolve. Recognition determines your effort. But when your motivation comes from personal discipline instead of external applause, your actions no longer follow predictable emotional patterns. You continue improving whether anyone notices or not. That independence creates a quiet authority that cannot be manufactured. Think about the strongest players in any competitive environment. Whether in business, negotiation, leadership, or life itself, they rarely reveal everything they know. They ask more questions than they answer. They observe more than they announce. They make decisions after gathering enough information rather than reacting to the first impression. Their strength lies not in secrecy for its own sake, but in understanding that information has value. Once shared carelessly, it cannot be reclaimed. There is also an unexpected psychological effect. The less people understand you, the more they begin projecting their own assumptions onto you. One person believes you are overconfident, another assumes you are insecure, someone else imagines you have hidden motives. None of these conclusions necessarily reflect reality. They reveal far more about the observer than about you. By resisting the urge to constantly define yourself, you allow others to expose the lens through which they see the world. Over time, this approach creates a remarkable shift. Instead of spending your life reacting to expectations, you begin creating them. Instead of being controlled by assumptions, you quietly challenge them. Instead of living according to the image others built for you, you continue evolving beyond every label they attempt to place upon you. Eventually, people stop trying to predict your next move because every prediction has failed. They realize your greatest strength was never mystery for the sake of mystery. It was the discipline to think before acting, observe before judging, speak only when words added value, and remain so deeply committed to growth that no outdated perception could ever keep pace with the person you were continuously becoming.